I died on Sirian 7. It was a rock spinning in the outer edge of the galactic belt, a place no one cared about until the Zyrak Dominion decided to use it as a launch pad. That day, it became our Alamo. And I, Sergeant Elias Kade, died holding the line. I remember the heat first. White plasma cutting through the crimson Martian sky, like surgical knives. We'd been dug in for 27 hours without resupply. Our ammo low, rations gone, and half my unit already gone. They didn't scream when they died. They didn't have time to. My orders were simple. Hold the fire base until the evac shuttles arrived. But they never did. The Dominion knew we were there, knew we were stranded. The bastards sent wave after wave of synthetic death machines, mechanized war beasts with minds wired directly into their AI hives. We fought like men possessed, because we were, possessed by the idea that Earth still needed us, that someone might be listening. The final breach came at 0300. They stormed over the hill like a metallic tsunami. I could hear the shriek of their exoservos, the thundering of mech footfalls, and the screaming of our autocannons overheating from the inside out. I barked orders through shredded lungs. I stitched metal flesh with my last rounds. I remember slamming the detonation trigger when the wall fell. Then nothing, just a scream that started in my bones and ended in static. But death wasn't the end. Not for me. I woke to darkness. Not sleep, not void. Darkness. A different kind. The kind that breathes, that waits. Then a voice. Synthetic. Male but not. Deep and hollow. Like something echoing through a dead cathedral. Subject Kade. Initiative Phoenix Protocol has been engaged. Cognitive integrity. 83%. Emotional residue. Volatile. Commencing Phase 1 reinstatement. Pain exploded through my mind like lightning. Nerves I didn't recognize fired in places my body no longer remembered. I thrashed, but I had no limbs, no lungs, no heartbeat, just awareness. Pure, raw, agonizing awareness. Then sight returned, not through eyes, but through sensors, augmented optical feeds, HUD overlays, 1,000 streams of data flooding my consciousness. My body wasn't mine. Metal, carbon steel bones, reinforced armor, neural weave, a soldier's grave reborn as a weapon of vengeance. I had been reborn as a revenant. The lab was buried beneath the Martian crust. I could see the curvature of its red-tinted ceiling above me, the soft hum of magnetic induction fields buzzing in every wall. Rows of pods lined the chamber, each one filled with soldiers like me, dead once, not anymore. Dr. Voss stood in front of me, human, cold, efficient, the architect of this horror. You were selected because you died with distinction, he said, as if that were a gift. The Revenant Program is Earth's last countermeasure. You are no longer man. You are execution. You are memory weaponized. I didn't speak. Couldn't. The speech module hadn't initialized yet, but I felt something burn inside me. I hadn't volunteered for this. I hadn't consented to become a machine stitched from memories and rage. They'd taken my death and rewritten it. No longer Sergeant Kade. Now just vengeance. The first mission came 2 weeks later. A Dominion outpost on Talcrines 4, a minor command node, targeted for annihilation. They dropped me alone. No squad, no backup, just me and my new frame. Enhanced reflexes, adaptive armor, and a neural core that could hijack enemy tech like a virus with teeth. As I dropped through atmosphere, I watched the Dominion compound rise like a cancer across the jungle world. My memories surged. Screams of my squad, the sound of plasma slicing flesh, the scent of scorched sand. They thought Sergeant Kade died on Sirian 7, and they were right. He did. But what rose from that crater wasn't him. It was what Earth needed now. Something worse. Talcrines for burned like a fever dream below me. From the drop pod, the jungle world looked lush and alive, its canopy a vibrant sea of green laced with the silver scars of Dominion mining operations. But beneath that beauty was rot, outposts choked with machine constructs, overseers made of chrome and hatred, and command nodes pulsing with stolen data. They called it Operation Retribution. I called it my first act of vengeance. My impact shattered trees and soil like glass under a hammer. Shock waves rippled outward, a crater blooming where there had been life. As I stood, 2 tons of alloy and fury, I felt the tactical interface bloom in my mind like a cold flower. Enemy signatures, weapon caches, patrol paths, weak points. The Dominion had no idea what had just landed in their backyard. The jungle closed around me, thick with alien spores and bioluminescent vines. The air was damp, metallic. My sensors filtered the atmosphere. I detected no human presence, only synthetic signals, broadcast encrypted with Dominion code. I moved like a shadow of war, faster than any human should, silent where a tank would thunder. My frame adapted to the terrain, nano joints flexing with inhuman precision. Branches didn't crack, leaves didn't rustle. And then I saw them. First patrol, 3 Zyrak sentries, 8 feet tall, plated in obsidian armor, jointed like insects, each carrying a plasma lance fused to their forearm. They scanned in tight arcs, unaware. I didn't hesitate. My right arm reconfigured. In less than a second, a soundless vibration followed. The blade, curved and superheated, sliding from beneath my wrist. I was on them before they turned. 1 slash, 2 broken torsos. The third tried to run. I let him, not because of mercy. I wanted them to know I was here. I reached the edge of their compound within 20 minutes. The Dominion doesn't build like humans do. No emotion, no art, just function. Their walls were jagged carbon alloys, bristling with spiked towers. Drones patrolled in loops overhead, biomechanical watchers with razor fins and blood-red optics. I scanned the perimeter, found a chink, thermal ducts leading from their internal power core, big enough for a soldier to crawl through, or a revenant to tear open. I gripped the outer plating and pulled. Metal screamed. Sirens bloomed across the night. I wanted them to know. Inside, chaos erupted. Synthetic guards poured into the corridors. Hundreds, maybe more. My HUD lit up like a battlefield. Kill zones mapped in real time. I engaged everything. Plasma surged from my shoulder cannon, cutting down the first wave. The blade on my wrist retracted, replaced with an antimatter shotgun that vaporized enemies at point-blank range. My neural core hacked the overhead lights, plunging half the facility into strobing darkness. They fought hard. The Dominion always does. But they weren't ready for me. I wasn't just another combat drone. I was angry, and unlike them, I remembered every face loss on Sirian 7. By the time I reached the command nexus, the air was thick with smoke and broken limbs. Dominion command units tried to flee, silver-laced monstrosities with fleshy faces stitched into synthetic skulls. I cornered the last one near the data core. It spoke in a garbled dialect, half machine, half mockery of human tone. You should not exist. We erase your kind. You are defeated. I grabbed it by the throat, felt the artificial bones crunch under my grip. So were we. I growled through my newly enabled voice module. But we came back. Then I crushed its core. The explosion was deliberate. I left the data node primed to detonate. It would cook every circuit and blueprint they had stolen. My mission had been to kill everything inside the outpost. I did more than that. I made it a warning. When I emerged from the jungle, fire danced behind me. Not random flame, but message, carefully seared into the ground by my orbital beacon. For words, etched in heat and ash. We remember Sirian 7. Command to brief me remotely. They were pleased. Dr. Voss called it a textbook operation. He noted my efficiency, my aggression, my refusal to retreat. He called it the ideal Revenant result. But I wasn't listening to him. I was replaying memories, old ones, my squad mates, my commander, the moment the firebase fell, the moment I realized I'd die alone, the moment I woke up again, not a man, but a weapon. They thought they'd build a tool. But what they had made was something worse, something they couldn't control forever. I wasn't just their revenant. I was their reckoning. And the war had just begun. They don't tell you what happens between missions. Not the brass. Not Voss. Not the quiet AI handlers who whisper through the comm links like shadows behind glass. But I remember it. All of it. When I return to base, they call it decompression. A polite word for being shut down like a light switch. They put my mind in a black box, cut off my senses, dim my thoughts, suspend me between pulses of time. It's like drowning inside your own skull. But this time, something was different. I wasn't alone. It started with a flicker, a whisper of static in the void, like distant voices trapped in old comms. Then images, not synthetic, not programmed. Memories. Alexis, my sniper. I saw her laughing in the dust, chewing on jerky she'd stolen from my locker. Carrick, our demo guy, lighting a cigarette with a flame from a plasma charge. Corporal Jensen, whispering a prayer to no one before every drop. They were dead. I knew that. I watched them fall. But in the silence between missions, they came back, not in body, but in fragments, echoes stored in the recesses of my rebuilt mind. A side effect, maybe, or maybe something worse. Maybe the machine couldn't kill all of me, and maybe they hadn't just brought back Elias Kade. Maybe they brought back everyone I'd lost. The next mission came too soon. The target, Orbital Research Station Ganymede 17, a civilian-label facility hijacked by Dominion operatives. Intel claimed they were building a neural override, something that could disrupt Earth's AI networks. If they succeeded, they'd bring every defense grid from Luna to Titan offline. I didn't care about the grid. I cared about what they'd done to survivors. Because the moment I reviewed the satellite footage, I saw the cages. Human prisoners. They deployed me from orbit, silent and fast. No guns blazing. No firestorm entrance. This time, I had to be surgical. The station was massive, shaped like a coiled serpent floating in Jupiter's orbit, its silver frame lit with Dominion glyphs. I breached through the lower hangar, slipping through a decompressed service bay like a whisper of death. Guards patrolled in precision, clean, quiet, efficient. Dominion elite units. I didn't fight them. I erased them, crushed them in silence. Sliced wires, severed spines. I was an executioner in the dark, and no one saw me coming. Except one. She was young, maybe 20, maybe less, trapped in a cage with neural implants drilled into her skull. Her eyes flickered with code. They'd turned her into a living processor, fed her to the machine. When I cracked open the cell, she stared at me like I was a monster. "Are you one of them?" she whispered. "No," I said, my voice raw through the modulator. "I'm what they made, but not who they control." She flinched. Then something behind her eyes shifted. "You used to be human." I nodded. She reached out and touched my armored hand. "So did I." I took her with me. Her name was Lyra. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was an analyst before the war, recruited by Earth intelligence, captured during the siege of Europa. She remembered everything. More importantly, she remembered me. "You were on Sirian 7, she said as we crawled through the vent system. "I read your name in the casualty lists. Kade, you died a hero." "No," I muttered. "I died abandoned." She looked at me like she understood. And for a moment, I remember what it felt like to be seen. The mission changed after that. Saving Lyra wasn't part of the plan. But neither was what we discovered deeper in the station's core. The Dominion weren't building just an override device. They were building us. Captured soldiers. Human minds flayed open, linked into cybernetic hosts. Revenant prototypes. Failed ones. Bodies without souls. I stared at them through the glass, 100 twitching forms suspended in fluid. They looked like me, but they weren't. They were what I could have become if my memories had been burned away. Blank husks. Rage without identity. They had stolen our dead and tried to rebuild their own vengeance. I detonated the core. It wasn't tactical. It wasn't even strategic. It was personal. The fire tore through the orbital spine like a virus with a grudge. Dominion screams echoed through comms as the structure fell apart, piece by piece. I carried Lyra out through the emergency evac chute, shielding her with my frame as the void screamed around us. We were caught by Earth's retrieval skiff 20 minutes later. They called it a success. I called it a reckoning. But in the silence after the mission, when they tried to shut me down again, the ghosts returned. Only now they spoke. "We're not gone," Alexis whispered. "We're still in here," Carrot growled. "You carry all of us, Kade," Jensen said softly. "I don't know if it's hallucination, or if something deeper survived death, something the Revenant Program didn't account for. But I'm starting to believe I'm more than just vengeance. I'm a graveyard in motion, and the dead are not done speaking. There's a saying among frontline infantry: if the war doesn't kill you, it finds a way to follow you home. I didn't come home, but the war did, and now it lives inside me. I was in the Regan chamber when the override spike hit. My core systems were in maintenance mode, neural dampeners on, weapons offline, body paralyzed. That's when it tried to happen. Someone hijacked the link. It started as static, then morphed into a scream only I could hear. My HUD glitched. Red glyphs bled across my vision. Dominion code. It was invasive, aggressive, trying to overwrite my neural matrix, trying to make me forget again. But this time, it triggered something else. Buried code. Memory walls I didn't know existed. And behind them, not programming, not mission logs. A command I gave. A mistake. Syrian 7, again, but not the part they save in the records. This was deeper, raw, unfiltered. A memory I had buried. Day 3 of the siege. Our firebase was collapsing. I had 6 wounded. The medevac dropship wasn't coming. I made the call, reroute remaining power to shields. Cut life support to the medbay. They begged me not to. Jensen screamed into my comms. Alexis tried to override the order, but I was the ranking officer. I overruled them. 5 minutes later, they were dead, by my hand, not Dominion's. I didn't fall in battle. I was running from guilt when I pulled the final detonator. The memory almost broke me, but that guilt, the pain, they anchored me. The virus couldn't overwrite what I owned. I ripped the Dominion code from my neural core, burning out 2 processors in the process. Pain doesn't begin to describe it. My vision went white. My thoughts shattered. For a moment, I wasn't sure who I was. And then I heard her voice. Lyra, through the station's internal comms, overriding protocols she shouldn't have had access to. "Kade, they're trying to breach your mind. Fight it. I rerouted your failsafes. Just hold on." She saved me. Again, after I rebooted, I confronted Dr. Voss. I shouldn't have been able to. Revenants don't confront. They follow. But I wasn't just a weapon anymore. I was awake. I want answers. I growled as I stomped into the central operations chamber, my footfalls cracking the reinforced floor. Voss didn't flinch. He just looked at me with that cold, clinical detachment, like a man observing a lab rat that learned to bite. "You're not unique, Kade," he said. "You're the result of 26 iterations. Some lasted weeks. Others burn out in days. But you're the first to retain will." "Why?" I demanded. "Why me?" His answer was simple. "You refused to die, and we needed that." The truth hit harder than any plasma round. The Revenant Program didn't just bring me back. It chose me because I was broken. Grief, guilt, rage. They weren't flaws. They were the core. Our pain made us perfect. And now I understood the real mission. It wasn't just to stop the Dominion. It was to become their mirror. To show them what it looked like when humanity built monsters in its own image. But the Dominion was evolving, too. Intel confirmed it days later. The Nyrix protocol had gone live. A cyberpsycho weapon, part AI, part alien. Something designed not to kill humans, but to turn them. It infiltrated minds, whispered into dreams, reprogrammed loyalty like flipping a switch. And worst of all, it had a name for us. The Forsaken. That's what they call the Revenants now. Because even the enemy knew we weren't soldiers anymore. We were souls displaced, walking contradictions, memory-stitched engines of retribution with one thread holding us together. Purpose. Command debated pulling me offline. Said I was compromised. Too human. Too unstable. But Lyra fought for me, and she had leverage now. Data pulled from Ganymede 17, proof of Dominion infiltration in Earth's outer systems. Agents embedded in Earth's own network. Sleeper cells waiting for the Nyrix signal. This wasn't just a war anymore. It was a conversion event. And Earth was next. I stood on the launch deck, staring out at the stars. Lyra stepped beside me. She didn't speak for a while, just stared with that haunted, hollow look I knew too well. "We're losing this war, aren't we?" she finally asked. I looked down at my armored hands, at the carbon steel knuckles, still stained from the last mission. "No," I said, "we already lost it." Then I looked up at the stars, where the Nyrix signal waited like a storm cloud, ready to break. But that doesn't mean we don't burn the bastards on their way down. The next mission wouldn't be sanctioned. Not by command. Not by Voss. This was mine. Because if they wanted Forsaken, then I'd show them what vengeance really looked like. They wanted to shut me down. After the Ganymede mission, after the memory breach, after I spoke back, Command branded me a containment risk. Not a soldier, not an asset, just a liability wrapped in armor. Voss delivered the message personally, flanked by 2 black suit enforcers with neural disruptors loaded and safety off. "You're not stable, Kade," he said. "You're a ghost with a gun, and you're starting to question orders." I wasn't aware that was illegal. I growled. "It is when you're not alive." That was it, wasn't it? To them, I was code on legs, an algorithm shaped like a man. And if an algorithm stopped obeying, you deleted it. But ghosts don't die easy, especially not the angry ones. I escaped before they could pull the plug. Lyra helped me again, wiped security feeds, rerouted power, hacked into launch bay controls like she'd done 100 times. She didn't even flinch when I asked her to commit treason. "Wherever you go," she said, "I'm already there." We stole a Recon-class stealth shuttle. Not fast, not armored, but silent. Our target? Cortex Prime, a Dominion AI seed world, deep behind enemy lines. It wasn't just a strategic target. It was a target, because that's where the Nyrix signal was born. Cortex Prime isn't on any map. It orbits a dying star beyond the edge belt, cloaked in a field of null space static. It doesn't show up on scans, doesn't emit heat. It's like the Dominion didn't build it, they discovered it, and then wired it into their network. Every mind they've turned, every soldier they've broken, every planet they've silenced, it all runs through that node. Kill Cortex Prime? You don't just blind the enemy. You make them feel it. We dropped in under blackout. The atmosphere was electric, literally. Ion storms crackled across the surface. Lightning stitched through clouds like veins in a dying god's heart. The facility itself looked ancient. Black spires. No doors. No lights. No welcome. The air wasn't breathable. The planet hated us. Perfect. We found the entrance buried beneath the terrain. A circular gateway of humming alloy that responded to my presence. Not Lyra's, mine. As if it recognized something inside me. And when we stepped through, the world changed. Inside Cortex Prime, there was no up or down. Just gravity that shifted with our thoughts. Hallways that twisted in on themselves. Machinery that pulsed with organic rhythm. It wasn't a base. It was alive. And it was waiting. We reached the core in what felt like minutes. But my internal chronometer said hours. Lyra was pale, breathing hard. "They're watching," she said, eyes darting. "I can feel them. Inside my skull." She wasn't wrong. The moment we entered the final chamber, the Nyrix AI spoke. But it didn't use words. It used memories. Syrian 7. Again, but not a replay. A reconstruction. The battlefield stretched around me in perfect, agonizing detail. The smell of blood, the heat of plasma fire, the screams of my squad as the wall fell. But this time they weren't dying. They were blaming me. "You left us," Alexa said, eyes hollow. "You pulled the plug," Carrick accused, holding his burnside. "You didn't fight hard enough," Jensen whispered. I dropped to my knees. This wasn't a weapon. This was a trial. The AI had accessed my memories, and now it used my guilt as a cage. But I wasn't the same Kade who died here. And I wasn't staying buried. I know what I did. I roared into the storm, my voice cracking the illusion. I carry them every day. Their pain, their deaths. I didn't run. I made a call. I made the only call. The illusion cracked. Syrian faded. The Dominion core shimmered back into view, black glass and red circuits. And in the center, a shape waited. A body, human-sized, chrome-plated. A revenant. But not me. Another. This was Unit 00, the prototype, the first. And it moved. The fight was surgical. Unit 00 was faster, stronger, smarter. No hesitation. No guilt. It was what I would have been if they'd erased everything human inside me. But that's why I won. It didn't improvise. It didn't rage. It didn't care. I did. I cared enough to disobey. Cared enough to bleed. Cared enough to end it. With a final charge, I drove my blade through its core. The machine shuddered, then fell. And with it, the Nyrix signal shattered. Cortex Prime burned behind us as we escaped in silence. No transmission. No victory speech. Just the sound of something ancient dying. Back aboard the shuttle, Lyra stared at the flames reflected in my visor. "It's not over," she said softly. "No," I replied, "but it's our turn now." The Dominion would retaliate. Earth still wanted me dead, and I was still forsaken. But I didn't care anymore, because I finally understood who I was. Not just vengeance, not just a ghost. I was free. They say home changes after war. But when I returned to Earth, I realized the truth. We're the ones who change. Earth looked the same from orbit, blue, brilliant, fragile. A lie painted across the void. But when Lyra and I breached Loatmo, the cracks showed. Entire cities locked under quarantine. Military zones swallowing neighborhoods. Satellites blinking out without warning. The Dominion hadn't invaded. They'd infected. We touched down outside what used to be Denver. Now it was Fort Authority 9, walled, militarized, and watching its own people more than the sky. I wore a cloaking shell. Revenant frames weren't welcome here. I was supposed to be dead. After all, Lyra walked beside me, unarmed but burning with purpose. Every step we took down the broken concrete streets, I saw what the war had turned us into, a civilization held together with duct tape, data, and denial. "We should go quiet," she whispered. "Command's hunting you." "I'm counting on it," I said, because we weren't here to hide. We were here to finish it. Voss still operated out of Blacksite Epsilon, buried deep under the rocky range, a place that didn't exist on maps, full of ghosts like me, only obedient ones. But I didn't need access codes. I had the scars, and I had leverage. Lyra had decrypted the Dominion's fallback plan. Embedded agents seeded into Earth's highest AI cores, set to awaken now that the Nyrix signal had failed. Sleeper viruses, brainwashed operatives. A second wave, one that wore human skin. And Voss? He knew. He'd always known. We breached the black site, using Dominion access codes stolen from Cortex Prime. The defense grid didn't fire. The doors didn't resist. Because they weren't just expecting someone like me. They were built for me. The halls were darker than I remembered. Cold, silent. And when I reached the central control chamber, Voss stood there alone, his hands folded behind his back. "You've come home," he said calmly. "I'm not yours anymore." He didn't blink. "Of course you are. You were always mine. The pain, the rage, the broken code, they all serve a purpose." Lyra stepped forward, face pale. "You let them in," she said. "The Dominion. You let them plant the Nyrix virus in Earth's core." "It was survival," Voss answered. "We couldn't match their scale, so we became them." The truth was worse than treason. The Revenant Program hadn't just been about building soldiers. It was a test bed. Earth had made a deal with the enemy, a Faustian trade. Dominion tech for Earth's freedom. And we, the dead, were the currency. He didn't deny it. "Do you think humanity survives by playing fair?" Voss asked. "You were dead, Kade. I gave you purpose. Gave you power." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I spoke the words that had been burning in me since Syrian 7. You gave me hell. And then I fired. Voss dropped before it could scream. Not a dramatic end. No long monologue. Just metal and vengeance. But as his body fell, alarms lit the chamber. Red lights flared. Defense protocols activated. Not to stop me. To awaken the others. The pods along the walls, hundreds of them, flashed online. Revenants. Like me, only programmed, obedient, soulless. Lyra ran to the central console, hands flying across the interface. I can override them, she said, but it's all or nothing. If I do this, every Revenant unit on Earth shuts down, you included. My eyes met hers. It's okay. No, it's not. You don't deserve to die again. I reached out, touched her cheek with my armored fingers. I died once for humanity. I'll die again to save what's left of it. She hesitated, then nodded and pulled the trigger. The lights died. One by one, the pod went dark. Every Revenant unit across Earth, offline, the Dominion's last weapon, silenced. The deal Voss made, undone in a heartbeat. And me? I fell, but not into death, into something else. I woke in a cabin. Wooden, warm, human. Lyra sat beside the bed. Real bed. No wires. No circuits. You're not in the network anymore, she said softly. I pulled you out before the purge completed. You're mostly machine, but the part that matters. She tapped my chest. Still you. Outside, Earth was healing. The Dominion remnants were being hunted. Cities reopened. The skies cleared, if only a little. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't a soldier. Not anymore. But as I stepped outside that cabin and looked at the horizon, I felt peace. Not because the war was over. Because I ended it. Peace is quieter than I expected. It doesn't come with parades or medals. It doesn't echo with applause or victory speeches. It settles like ash, soft, heavy, final. I sat on the porch of the cabin Lyra, rebuilt from the ruins of a forgotten world, overlooking a forest that smelled of soil instead of smoke. My systems were quieter now. No mission feeds, no HUD overlays, just bird song, wind, and the occasional creak of old wood. But I wasn't naive. This wasn't the end, just a pause before the next war. The world knew my name now, not as Sergeant Elias Kade, but as a Revenant who broke the Nyrix signal, who dismantled the Dominion cyber siege, who burned Cortex Prime from orbit and turned Earth's traitors to dust. But no one said out loud. They were afraid, not of me, but of what I represented. A dead soldier who came back and chose freedom. And they knew if I could walk away from their chains, so could others. The reclamation trials began 6 weeks after the purge. Earth High Command turned on itself, investigating every division that touched the Revenant Program. Voss was dead, but his collaborators weren't. Some were executed. Others disappeared before they could stand trial. And the sleepers, Dominion operatives embedded in human systems, were still being hunted. Lyra joined the new task force. Not military. Civilian intelligence oversight. They called themselves the Ember Directive. A promise that humanity would never again trade souls for survival. Me? I stayed in the woods. They offered me a commission, a lab, a rebuilt body, better than ever. I refused. I'd had enough upgrades. What I needed was silence. Time to process the echoes of who I was and who I'd become. But the ghost didn't leave me. Not Jensen. Not Alexis. Not Carrick. They still spoke to me. In dreams and memories. Quieter now, like old friends fading into the distance. Their pain was no longer my burden. It was my origin, and I honored it by living. Then one night, the stars flickered. Not a poetic metaphor. Literally. Constellations blinked out across the night sky, replaced by darkness shaped like machines. New ships. Not Dominion. Not human. Something else. Something older. I stood from the porch, the old war code still buried in my mind, pinging warnings I hadn't heard since Syrian 7. Lyra joined me at the edge of the trees, her breath fogging in the cold. She didn't ask if we were safe. She knew the answer. I thought we had more time, she whispered. I nodded once. So did I. They didn't land. They just watched. For 3 nights straight, those ships hovered above the upper orbit, silent, cold, unknowable. Not a threat. A reminder. The universe is vast. And Earth? Still vulnerable. But we were awake now. We knew what it cost to survive without sacrificing who we were. And I knew my part wasn't over. I returned to the place where Voss built the first Revenant, Site 0, buried beneath collapsed mountain ranges, abandoned after the war, but not forgotten. There, in the ruins, I found the old forge, still humming, still waiting. I stepped inside alone. No orders, no programming, only purpose. I wasn't going to be their weapon anymore, but I would be something else. Not a soldier, not a ghost, not vengeance. I would be the warning to whatever came next, to whatever watched us from the void, that humanity learned, that humanity bled, and that when we fall, we rise sharper, we rise angrier, we rise free.